the countries, it was much bigger than what Canada's got right now with this trucking
Mhm.
thing. A significant portion of the population was very upset because their gas prices got raised. They use compressed natural gas for a lot of their cars and trucks just to get around, and their average, income is for a good engineering job with one of the miners like Gazprom or Kazatomprom or whatever, is $11,000 a year. A lot of these people are living on $600 a month, and their gas went up 100% percentage wise in a day, and so that kind of pricked the pin of a lot of, I think, anxiety they had about inflation, about a lot of things. Maybe there was some foreign interference going on too, kind of taking advantage of the tension. I don't know, and I won't speculate to that. But there was a lot going on. There wasn't just one thing. There was a lot going on, but it's going to be
Mhm.
very hard.
Hey everybody, this is 𝙈𝙀𝙏𝘼𝙇𝙎, and today we're going to get a uranium update from our good friend Steve. This is Dennis. Steve, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, Rob. It's good to see you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, good to have you back on. I know it's probably been a couple of 3 weeks since we have talked about uranium, and in the meantime, uranium prices come down a little bit. It's in a little bit of a correction, which is normal when you see it go the way it did. There are always dips
Yeah.
and runs like that, so I'm not overly concerned. But I thought it'd be a good time to talk about it, and I think you maybe had some intel and some thoughts on the market. So I'm just going to let you take it away and tell us what you got.
Okay. Yeah. I think the fundamental case is stronger than ever, and the price action is just, like you said, it went parabolic and it's come back down, and now
Mhm.
it's definitely at a time where I am encouraging friends and family and everybody I know, strangers, to
Mhm.
accumulate some, because I think they're going to see some pretty amazing gains this year.
Yeah.
And I'm not calling the bottom this week. Maybe we've got a good chance of that, but uh, I, before the end of the year, we're going to see some fireworks.
Mhm.
There's some stuff behind the scenes that I'm going to try to go over what I can.
Okay. Well,
So
cool.
we'll pull up the.
And my social media person is going to be super interested in this because she bought uranium stocks.
I
And so
know.
she's like in uranium. She's like, oh, my stocks are down right now. I need
I
something to
know.
boost them
I was talking to her last week. I was like, don't
up.
worry about it. So Kazakhstan produces about 43% of the world's uranium, and the French Orano, the Canadian Cameco, they all have JVs there.
Mhm.
And it's the largest land border in the world between two countries. So,
Mhm.
Russia was obviously pretty concerned with the unrest recently, and their leader
Mhm.
actually invited the Russian special forces to come help quell the protests.
Mhm.
So anyway, that is still ongoing. Things are still not peaceful. Banks and infrastructure are still not quite back to normal. It's getting there.
Mhm.
But we saw the CEO of Kazatomprom come out and say, "Oh, it's all okay.
Mhm.
We're going to meet our obligations." And then a couple days later, he's like, "Oh, well, there's a risk of supply chain disruptions and COVID and I think people overreacted to this, expecting them to declare force majeure in a day.
Yeah.
And that wasn't my base case. My base case on probability is that in 15 to 18 months, they're just not going to be able to produce everything they thought they were going to.
Yeah.
And
What are the main reasons? Just restate the main reasons for everybody.
for Kazatomprom,
Yeah.
the countries, it was much bigger than what Canada's got right now with this trucking
Mhm.
thing. A significant portion of the population was very upset because their gas prices got raised. They use compressed natural gas for a lot of their cars and trucks just to get around, and their average, income is for a good engineering job with one of the miners like Gazprom or Kazatomprom or whatever, is $11,000 a year. A lot of these people are living on $600 a month, and their gas went up 100% percentage-wise in a day. And so that kind of pricked the pin of a lot of, I think, anxiety they had about inflation, about a lot of things. Maybe there was some foreign interference going on too, kind of taking advantage of the tension. I don't know, and I won't speculate to that. But there was a lot going on. There wasn't just one thing. There was a lot going on. But it's going to be very hard. Just this last week, they fired about half the staff at Kazatomprom, and everybody else that wasn't fired got to take a lie detector test. And I'm sorry, that's just not normal business in
It's not
the Western world. I don't think they're going to be able to meet every pound.
You're fired, you take a lie detector test. You're fired, you take a lie detector test.
I mean, like, I think they're, I just don't see how they're going to be able to produce 100% of what they had last year. Now, some of that could just be the cost of the acid that they use to leach the uranium out of the ground. Some of that can be the cost of gas. Some of that's going to be, I think, the availability of workers. Some of that is the government. The new government's already been installed, and they're talking about taxing every single commodity. Gold, uranium, all of it, copper, gas. They produce about 1%, I think, of the world's gas and stuff too. So they're about a little over 1 million pounds a day, I think. So, or 1 million barrels a day. So, I expect their all-in sustaining costs to rise from, a few dollars to be more in line with the rest of the world. And a lot of, new incentivized production, it was thinking, oh, well, we need 55 or 60 to get people to come online, but we've seen all this inflation for everybody. I think that number is now 70, 75 to be sustained. And I think you're probably going to need higher that in order for them to get financing. So I think we're going to have to see 80, 85 before any of these new mines get contracted. So that unrest, had a cost. And, there's a lot of different metals that are in a shortage.
Yes, lots of metals.
Right? I mean, like, we've talked about a lot of them. Silver, I think that's gonna hit the next
copper, lead, zinc. I mean, just go down the line. Technically, they're all, even though they're not all manifesting in price right now, projections are over the next 3 to 4 years, we're going to have massive shortages of everything, especially when you have China building 57 New York cities and not even putting any people in them,
Yeah, and Africa and India continue to grow. I think that's a huge thing. So this is from Mr. 𝙂𝙊𝙇𝙀𝙍, our friend, and he said, he expects 50 to 87 million pounds shortfall this year.
Oh, if you're going to share screen, sorry, we're not seeing it.
Oh, goodness. I've been sharing the screen. I'm so sorry.
Oh, my apologies. I should have said something earlier. That's okay. We can catch up on your slides. No problem.
I've been talking over the slides. Okay, share screen.
That's okay. I do that all the time. I just kind of wing it and pretend that I didn't have anything to put up, right?
I actually did, but I'm so sorry. Okay, can you see it now?
I can see the flag.
Okay, so flag of Kazakhstan. There we go.
There we go.
And here's our map of Russia.
Here's the border.
Kazakhstan.
Good Lord, look at the border. You weren't joking.
No, and it's impossible.
You think if they build the Great Wall of China around Kazakhstan, it'll stop an invasion?
No.
No.
And this might be a good time to go back over it. Uzbekistan's right here.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see my mouse. And southern Kazakhstan is where most of the uranium comes from. There's some mines in the north, but most of it's in the south. As is the Russians' Cosmodrome, their launching pad for their space program.
Okay, a question for you, Steve. Is it any coincidence that 3 countries have been in the news the last couple of years that are bordered with Russia? Kazakhstan, Georgia for the pipeline, and now Ukraine. And I had people on Twitter saying, well, it's all the US's fault. But okay, fine. I know the US is often an aggressor. But look, a lot of the news is around these areas that are right around the Soviet Union. So obviously they have something to do with it.
Yeah. I don't believe in coincidences. And I don't know if too many of our friends and Gold Silver Pros do either. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's definitely going to be a security of supply issue.
Yeah.
This was the video I had. I couldn't get the video load, but there was people robbing banks just to get money out so they could have money to eat with.
Mhm.
There was some crime too, but some of this, I mean, if the bank locks you out and they have your money, I mean, you go in and get it. It's very practical.
Right.
Anyway,
Your
so
bank
yeah,
holiday? There is no bank holiday in Kazakhstan.
no. So Oscar, the CEO, had said, "Oh yeah, we've got this, right?" There's this quote, and then he said, "Oh no, we don't have this."
On second thought.
Oh, supply chains, and you expect an authoritarian regime and a state-owned uranium company to say, "Oh, it's COVID. Oh, it's the supply chain." They're not going to say, "Oh, half our workforce is taking lie detector tests and the other half went home because we don't trust them anymore."
Mhm.
So it's going to be pretty interesting. I think over the next 18 months. So
Could you imagine that headline in like Amazon or Tesla?
Well, now that Jeff Bezos owns
the workforce
his own media companies now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so some people are predicting as high as 87-90 million pound shortfall.
Mhm.
I think 30-35 is probably the number I'm going to base my base calculations on.
Yeah.
I don't see that that's avoidable.
Mm.
90 would be great, but I think
Mm.
30-35 is going to be enough to get to the price we need to incentivize new mining, new production, and I think we'll see that. This was from Bank of America. I think they put this out a couple months ago, but I've talked to some of these miners since. I've talked to I've talked to several of these miners, and I've been on their calls. All their full cost has gone way up.
Mhm.
just like my business, just like everybody else's budget at home, it's all gone way up, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
And so it was, oh yeah, well, to get the pounds we need, we're going to have to see 50 or 55. No, I think it's in the 70s or 80s now. And by the time those contracts are actually signed, it may be higher. Friend Scott made this for me. He's a nice Australian and a fellow fan. He was saying that, we saw commodities decouple from the NASDAQ and from the general stock market back in 2004, 5, 6, 7. And I think we'll see that again. And all commodities. Right now, we're still seeing silver stocks and uranium stocks and all those kind of track the stock market to some degree, right? And if the dollar or treasuries or whatever goes up and down,
well, they certainly haven't separated to the upside. That's for sure.
No, they have not, which has been frustrating. But if you look at the mining ETF, the big one, URA, and divide it by the price of spot of the physical commodity, they're pretty cheap. They're not as cheap as gold miners are, but they haven't even priced in really new production yet. So I think there's a good chance, I think we have good probability this year that we see spot price double, and we see a lot of these miners, even the ETFs, triple, maybe more.
Okay.
And Steve Penny made this for us, a friend, the Silver Chartist. Can you see it okay?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. There we go. Is that bigger?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, sorry. Learning how to present. And this actually tracks with the fundamentals I talk to when I talk to guys that buy fuel, refine fuel, or working in the mining industry. I say, are there many pounds between 50 and 75? And they're like, no. There's some pounds, probably for sale between 75 and 100. And then really, it's going to take new all-time high prices to get the hedge funds and family offices to sell the fuel they have above ground already in.
You're saying between 50 and 75, it either doesn't incentivize or is not enough.
It's not
new production.
Between 50 and 9. Nobody's going to sell it.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's just these Becky's will sell for 50. The Olympic Dam, it's a credit out of the copper gold mine in Australia, so they'll sell at 45.50.
Mm-hmm.
But there's not any new production that's going to come online between here and 75. So, you know, do we see spot price go from Friday it was 43.50? Do we see that go to mid 80s this year? I think we got a pretty good chance. I like my odds. So even if you just bought the physical trust from Sprott,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a good investment for you. But I think you're going to get a lot of leverage to that. And this was another one Steve made, and it was uranium versus oil. So I like to price assets and other assets. Uranium versus oil is one. I think we see another break where uranium outperforms oil, and I'm pretty bullish oil, but I think uranium, because you have so much more power per pound come out of it to make electricity, to make heat. I think it's going to explode to the upside over the next couple of years. I'm biased, but this is uranium versus gold. We're still really, really low. And this just helps me, like, hey, what are we doing? Are we cheap? You know, because the dollar's been inflated so much, I just don't trust the price action in the dollar. But, you know.
Yeah, it's like we don't measure anything in dollars anymore. I think about 10 years ago, I really started measuring everything in gold.
Yeah.
Or in oil, you know, and those types of things. And that makes more sense.
Or how many hours of work it was going to take.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I think we go up. Steve was saying we kind of lost support and we're dipping down to the 200 MA, and it went. We actually went below the 200 moving day average. But I think it's a pretty great buying opportunity right now, because I think we explode out of the upside of this channel. I think we probably see $120, $130 URNM this year by the end of the year, and that's it. Should look. I think it's in the 60s right now, so I think we probably see it double pretty quickly. So I think it popped down below, but I think it's going to pop back up above before the end of the year. So, and have you ever done this? I'll take the best miner in the space, whether it's Newmont or in this case Cameco, and divide it by the Dow Jones just to see kind of historically where we are. I mean, we've got to do a 6.5x just to catch up, because I think the stock market's overvalued, and the commodity miners, you know, are probably undervalued.
The stock market is so majorly overvalued. Gosh, the presentation I gave for the OTC market was on just the P&E ratios, are basically highest in history.
Yeah,
I mean, just ridiculous. And in the NASDAQ, it's being held up like by 5 or 6 names, while about 40% of them are about 1/2 of what they were a year ago. I mean, the NASDAQ is actually cratering, but you couldn't tell by the index because it's held up by some of the big tech stocks. So you have all these big tech stocks sitting up here, and the rest of the NASDAQ is just imploding. And yeah, I bet if I went and analyzed the S&P and Dow, I'd probably come up with a similar type of story. Where you've got it's probably a little bit less dire in those indexes because I think they're more broadly based. But I don't, you know, looking at earnings reports, some of the big names are doing okay, and some of everybody else is not doing so hot.
Yeah. So here's some Grant Chalmers, our friend in Australia. He said that he's tracking kind of the sentiment, and it got pretty overheated in November. And it's come back down, and I think unfortunately there's probably a lot of retailers that got shaken out by the price correction. This is one of the ways I track kind of what retail's doing is kind of just general internet sentiment. And I think unfortunately it's at a low, just at the perfect time to buy. I think there's probably the least participation. But yeah, hopefully our friends and Gold Silver Pros can get in on that action. So I think we're about to see a parabolic move. This is called the Livermore cylinder on speculations, and Jesse Livermore is probably the most famous investor and speculator I knew of. And I think we're close to 7. I'm not saying this is the bottom, but I think we're near a 7, and this year we see the move from 7 to 8.
So 7 to 8 to 9 to 10.
Yeah, we see that big parabolic.
This is almost like a subset of Elliott wave analysis.
Yeah.
You're looking at certain, I forget what they call them in Elliott wave analysis, but you have your waves, you have your like subwaves or partial waves, and this looks like a partial Elliott wave to me.
Yeah, but if you look at the URNM or even the spot price, it looks a lot like this. Here's the market cap, and it's, you know, it jumped up to almost 45, and it's back down now to just above 35, which is crazy. Who was it lost $100 in a day after market hours? Was that Netflix?
Yeah, Netflix is cratering because they're saying investors are, it's one of the first, it's not a tech stock, although I'd argue it's a tech stock because what they do is this video distribution, but it's one of those darling stocks that is one of the first to fall. And I think you're going to see this and more of them. It's because it got so inflated, investors are just coming out looking for the next deal. And Netflix, it got overinflated. They've been spending literally billions of dollars on content, weren't making a lot of money, and their stock got inflated. I think, you know, Tesla's going to be one of those.
Yeah, probably eventually Apple, but they lost more that day in that one single hour of trading after hours. They lost like, I think $39 billion in market value.
Oh yeah.
That's more than the entire uranium space. And, you know, you see stuff like that, and it's just like, well, that blows my mind. Because, you know,
Yes, because Netflix is so much more important than power generation for billions of people across the world. We have to have our Netflix, but we don't want to value the power generation. No, we don't. We would never do that. That would make entirely too much sense.
But yeah, I think the world will start to make sense again. Oh, that doesn't show up very well.
I tweeted something from a story from 𝙎𝙬𝙾𝙆 today. I forget where they sourced it, but they were talking about peak rationality in 1980, where you would do a search of words and people would talk about rational concepts like valuation and due diligence. And now it's peak emotional time, you know? So we're in the peak of emotional trend, momentum chasing and investing. And this has got to flip, right? And people are going to go back to rationale. And that's where you don't value Netflix over uranium, or, you know, value Tesla at thousands of times earnings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting for that to happen.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty massive rotation. I think we're starting to see it. I think we're starting to see a lot of the big money and smart money rotate out of the tech stocks. We're seeing ARK kind of stumble. We're seeing the Tiger 40 stumble. I think we're going to see more money back into oil.
Steve, ARK was such a great idea. It was because she said so. That was the whole investing thesis, because I say so.
You know, it worked for a long time, and she's still outgained me the past year, I think.
Hopefully she sold out at the top, maxed out her money.
But yeah, I've got a lot more faith long term in companies like Global Atomic. They've got a zinc company in Turkey that's making a lot of money, and they've got, you know, one of the best uranium mines in Africa, Niger. I think China and France are going to get a bidding war over it, and I think we see this 10 or 11 times its share price. This is Canadian dollars, by the way. It's at 3 something. I think it was at 240 something in American dollars this last week. But, you know, it went up from 475, 480, I think, when Steve Penny called the top on it, to you know, now at $3. But I expect it to be at 35 here in 2 years, 3 years. You know, there's not too many of those companies where you can have a lot of faith that they're going to be 10 baggers. But a lot of the gold miners, a lot of the uranium miners, I think are definitely going to be looking at that. So, and that's just one example. There's a lot of good companies, but the chart was so pretty, I had to put it in. So what else can I cover for us?
Just go back to the original thesis a bit. For those of you who haven't been watching the uranium series, Steve and I started this, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago, Steve. I think it was after the last conference we had in August. You started to make the bull case for uranium before it really started to pop, and then it popped, and then we've been kind of following it, but we haven't done an update in a while. And I know that you do so much research on your own, but you're very well connected to a lot of companies, to a lot of investors and analysts. And so it's great to bring you on because you always have so much information. So let's just talk about, you know, but reset it for anybody who hadn't watched the series. What is the bull case for uranium?
But basically just that it's really the only commodity that I can name that is below its cost of production, isn't being produced, and has a supply deficit. And I think that comes to a head this year.
Yeah.
And I think people are going to have to finally start paying up. And those utility companies, they have multi-billion-dollar power plants that underlie our grid. And without them, you have what Germany has. 9 days after they turned it off, they started having blackouts and brownouts in Berlin.
Oh, this is absolutely brilliant. So they turned down half of their nuclear capacity at once, and what are they going to run it off of? And they don't want
Russian gas.
So they're going to run it off of what? All that Russian they have in Germany, not,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is just as I understand the move towards quote unquote green energies, because this is, a progressive thing that they want. And I get it, but it's so stupid when you don't have the infrastructure and the proven sources of energy to do this. I don't care what your agenda is. Yeah. And look, a lot of what's going on with Ukraine and Georgia and all that stuff, and the stupid decisions that Europe is making on their energy is playing into the hands of Russia, but it's increasing geopolitical conflict. This is what happens when you have I'm going to go off on a rant here for a second. This is what happens when you have idiot politicians making decisions for agenda items that are not feasible. Not only do you starve your economy of needed power during the middle of winter, which is stupid, and it affects your industry during an era, I don't know, when we're having supply chain shortages already, but then you play into the whole geopolitical situation with Russia and you give them power over you. This is immensely stupid. And I don't know what the hell the idiots who are, all the politicians in Europe are thinking, but they're idiots. You don't do this. Just for political reasons, you don't turn off your uranium, because you've already got an issue on the power front having to do with natural gas, having to do with oil, and now you turn off your uranium because you have people in their Congress and in their government that thinks, oh, we're just going to get rid of all fossil fuels and magic fairy dust. We're going to sprinkle magic Harry Potter fairy dust on it, and we're going to figure out how to power our industries, and everybody's going to be okay. Nobody's going to freeze to death.
Yeah.
It's idiotic. It's idiotic on every possible count you can have. Not only, not to mention the fact that, as you've demonstrated on this program before, that uranium is actually very clean. So talk a little bit about the improvements that have been made in cleaning up, the reactors and the waste and stuff.
Yeah, we're getting pretty close to where there's actually no waste at all. I mean, there are going to be spent fuel rods, but we can blend them back into new types of fuel with newer types of reactors that run a little higher enrichment, and so I mean, it's a nearly perfect solution. It's definitely the best we have.
So in other words, the industry has figured out how to address a problem with idiot politicians getting involved. I'm imagining that the free
market. Yep. Yeah, and I think that's probably the bull case for all commodities, but especially so for uranium is the idiocy of many governments, not just any one, but many governments is going to make us very, very rich, because they've been stuck on stupid, and
they're
going to have to
all the way
pay
to the left, right?
Yeah, but they're going to have to pay us to undo their mistakes, right?
Well, okay, so talk about competitors. You got coal, which is a big one. It can be brought online, but you've got China basically saying they have to get out of it because of the pollution. Of course, China didn't do a great job regulating and making coal as clean as possible. It's partly their fault, but they still can't have more coal. So China's going full on in nuclear right now, aren't they?
Yep. Yeah, they're looking to spend about 550 billion between now and 2035. And we're looking at the EU. They just came out with the EU taxonomy. We're thinking they probably bring on probably another 450-ish billion. So we're looking at $1 trillion from just two governments over the next couple of years.
And you cannot turn off nuclear in the US because it's actually a much higher percentage of baseload than people know. And going back to February of last year when we had the snowmageddon in Texas, you had the freezing gas wells and all that stuff. And what had happened in Texas was there's so many people moving here, our baseload requirements have gone bazonkers. Texas is growing by leaps and bounds. And instead we tried to do wind farms and solar. But the problem is during bad weather, the windmills were freezing up, the wind generation, and the solar wasn't working because it's gloomy and there's no sun. And so all of a sudden they're like, oh, gee, it doesn't work during bad weather. Now, typically Texas has traditionally pretty good weather, but even so, when I had solar panels on my roof, you would get during the middle of the summer 5 good hours of solar power. But people are pulling electricity off the network 24 hours. So wind and solar aren't going to work. You have to have some base load.
Yep.
And so in Texas, what's happened is we haven't replaced or increased our base load with reliable power like nuclear, natural gas, or coal. And we paid the price during the winter when it got really cold. Not only that, but a lot of people don't know this. We had rolling brownouts in North Texas and probably elsewhere, but I just know North Texas because I live here during the summer when it got over 100 degrees. And they kept telling us it's the grid. It doesn't have enough power. And they had to basically go install more power very close to where I live. Within about 10 miles of where they lived, they had to increase base load this summer because you couldn't, people couldn't air condition their office spaces. So, anyway, so this is going on everywhere, but nuclear really is the only answer if you want to get out fossil fuels.
Yep. I heard an internet rumor that I haven't been able to confirm, so I don't want to pass it on as gospel.
Sure.
But I don't want to not share it because I think I want all my friends and family and fellow Gold Silver pros to be prepared. I think there's a pretty strong possibility Cameco's Macarthur River comes back online. And I think they'll announce it at their February 9th meeting. We've heard a lot of CEOs. I've heard 5 CEOs in the last 2 weeks tell me about how the term contracting's come way up because of Kazakhstan and because of security supply and because the spot market's getting tight. And so I think they've probably found 4 million pounds worth of contracts, which is what they need to open it. And they've probably done it at $60–65 a pound. We won't know those numbers until a couple of quarters after, and it's kind of disclosed in their K10s, 10Qs, their financial disclosures, right? Like that's how we kind of backwards and math it. But it's an 18 million pound a year potential mine, but they can do as little as 4 and be profitable if they have the right contracts, and I think they do. I think they announced that here in less than 2 weeks. And I'm afraid what will happen is the prices of a lot of these companies will go down because the market will misinterpret that as, oh, there's no supply crunch. When they should hear it, and they should hear, oh, Macarthur River is starting back online. The bull market has started for reals. Right? And so I think a lot of people will do the wrong thing as a knee-jerk reaction for a couple of days and lose money. And so that's why I'm not calling the low today, because I think Cameco might come out and say something. I'm not impressed with their corporate communications. They kind of stick their foot in their mouth a lot, right?
Yeah.
And I think they'll probably come out and they'll try to say, hey, good news for us. We've got some contracted pounds, and yeah, good for them. And instead of their share price going up, or instead of the industry share price, industry stock market cap going up, I think it might go down. And I think, man, that's going to be one heck of a buying opportunity. So look for that. I don't know that's true. I think it's probably true.
Steve, what do you say to people who we've had a little bit of a downturn? Normal. We always have pullbacks in market cycles. It never goes up in a straight line. What do you say to people who are a little bit frustrated with that? Because we had that big boom in uranium. We don't think it's the big boom. We think it's just telling us we're in a bull market, but some people got frustrated by that, not seeing that straight upward line. So what are your recommendations for people?
Just revisit the bull case that we don't have enough pounds. We can't get enough pounds. I mean, all these mines are going to take 2 years at least, to get them back open, or longer. To
get them open, and new stuff can take 7 to 10 years, especially with permitting, exploration, building mines, transportation.
Right.
But that's a far left part of the supply chain, getting it out of the ground. That's also a huge concern because of all the growth and need for power.
Right.
You mentioned China. We mentioned China and these other people bringing on, and further, I think, Steve, that projections right now don't necessarily even take into account how wind, solar, and hydrothermal and geothermal are not going to be able to support the baseload requirements going forward. Not any one of those, not that we want to demonize any one of those. Like I said, I had solar panels on my roof for years. I loved the power it gave me, but they're just not sufficient for baseload. And so all of this hype around this green revolution and relying on that, either it's hours a day you can get out of it like solar, or wind doesn't always blow. We've experienced that in Texas. or hydrothermal and geothermal, there's limited areas you can actually pipe that in and actually get it. So the availability of some of these alternative, energy sources for baseload power that people think are going to be, the future of energy generation, it's not enough.
Right.
It really, and it will never be enough. You'll have to always have something else providing baseload power. And I think we don't even know the ramifications of all this policy making around moving to those green energies that's not even rolled out yet. And the projections that they're using and their estimates that the think tanks and the analysts that are not going to come true, but Steve, that the politicians are making decisions on. So I think it's even more so in the next 3 to 5 years as we begin to move into this new phase of green energy revolution, that it actually exacerbates the problem and makes it worse. And what's going to happen is people aren't going to invest at the far left of the supply chain in the mines, and you can't turn them up right away, like you said. Even if you got one on maintenance, it takes a couple of years. And even if you fast track permits, it's the physical process of getting everything ready. And the mines that we have, the exploration dollars may not be going into. So that, that's sort of the hidden, beneath the surface risk here that governments are going to be facing, people are going to be facing, in energy, that I think is even more so going to manifest in stuff like uranium. And I think it's going to bring coal back. It's going to bring natural gas back. All those prices are going to rise.
Right. Yeah, this was just an early innings. I mean, we went parabolic for a minute, and there was just traders going to trade, and they traded it back down, and that's fine because they had year-end profits they wanted to take to show that they got certain numbers and whatever. And we got definitely stretched on the RSI, and that makes a lot of those hedge funds and big money uncomfortable when you're sitting in an RSI 75 or 80. But I think we're going to see a lot more of that this year. It's going to be pretty enjoyable. But I'm definitely not selling any of my shares of anything until we're above the price of what it takes for a new mine to start. I mean,
it has to be, and
that'd be like selling silver at $4. I mean,
no, and
I know it costs them $18 to make it. Like what? You don't sell it at 12. You don't.
And it has to be sustained. It can't just go up and stop. That's not how this works. Mining takes a long time. Correct. And it's extremely capital intensive. That price is going to have to go there and stay there, right?
Right. And for quarters, not just a week or a month.
Yeah.
Quarters. Yeah.
So real quick, what about thorium? I've been following thorium for a long time. You have 𝙂, who had this idea of doing the molten salt reactors super safe. Yeah. We know uranium's a lot safer now than it used to be, but uranium's going to run out. We have much more thorium than we have uranium, to be honest with you. Sure. And with uranium, also being used for other things in the military, it's gotten the lion's share of the attention because you can militarize it and you can use it for power generation. We already had that power generation technology. Do you think thorium ever starts to become a replacement? Think, palladium became a replacement for platinum all of a sudden. Right. Do you think thorium eventually becomes a replacement for uranium, anytime in the foreseeable future?
A replacement, no, because the thorium reactors need uranium to run.
Mm-hmm. That's
so
a good point.
Replacement.
People know that. It's kind of like the starting process has to be uranium, right?
But the technology and the commercialization of it, and it's not going to be there till I don't know anybody that can tell me reliably or on record that it's going to be there, but 2035, 2040. I mean, not anytime soon. It'll be more for our kids than it will be for you or me.
I agree with you. Hopefully, we have enough uranium and natural gas and coal, and they don't shut everything down, that we have electricity and we can do these videos for the next 10 to 15 years. Yeah. Otherwise, I'll have to find something else to do for a living.
No, but I mean, people ask me about fusion. I've talked to the scientists doing the fusion research in Chicago and emailed them, and I was like, how close are we, guys? And they're like, oh, we're making good progress. I'm like, okay, so what year? And they're like, oh, it's gonna be a couple decades. And I'm like, okay.
I remember when I was in junior high, so this is probably late 80s, late 80s, 87, 88, when they were talking about fusion and fission and all this stuff came out about how we think we've cracked the code. Oh my God, that was 32, 33 years ago. Yeah. And we still have not really cracked that code. So I think people need to understand when we're talking about these futuristic scenarios. They never occur as quickly. We can write about them. We can write books about them. You know, Isaac Asimov can write books, and you know, we can all talk about how great it's going to be to live that Jetsons future. But it honestly takes a lot longer than people think. I mean, they've been talking about both fusion and fission for ever since I was a kid, probably even a lot longer than that.
Oh, yeah.
But in popular media since I was a kid, even before we had the internet, I was hearing this on the radio. We've got a breakthrough of fission. We got a breakthrough of fusion. And then 30 years later, we're still not using it, right?
No, I mean, I would love to see the investment from every nation there and for it to get there just as quickly as possible. We need more energy of all types, but I don't see it happening in the next couple of years anyway. So
we need another Nikola Tesla to tell us how to do free energy. That's the solution. Where's this generation's Tesla?
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
All right, Steve. Well, thank you so much for popping on. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy life and your family time here on a Sunday to do this. We're going to put this on the program this week. It'll be a couple of days before we get it out, but we definitely wanted to get it out. But I think it's a good time to talk about it. New information there is very important, but also just reiterating the story around uranium and why it's important. When you're in one of these bull markets, especially early on when everybody's not talking about it, it's easy to get distracted and go play with momentum stuff, whatever's the momentum right now. But remember, as those momentum markets get long in the tooth, we start to see pullbacks like we're seeing in Netflix and the NASDAQ and things like that, signs.
Yep.
And you need to look for your next investment thesis. And what do? You buy when stuff is cheap, when it's out of favor, but it has a really good case. And I think, Steve, you made that case uranium multiple times, but it's good to have you back on just to kind of reiterate, maybe reach.
Yeah, I think the time is finally now, though, and then we can say it's within 12 months, you know, which is, you know, imminent. You know, it's nice.
Yeah, and in the investment world, that is considered imminent. In fact, that's considered extremely fast. So. All right, Steve, thank you so much for the update.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We'll have you back on the program every once in a while just to talk more about this.
All right, buddy. Anytime.
All right.
Hey everybody, this is Robert. Thank you so much for watching that video content. I wanted to remind you, you can find us on goldsilverpros.com. We have a free newsletter. If you click here and enter your email address, we'll send that out every Monday to you, as well as we have special precious metals deals with leading bullion dealers here in the United States. If you click that button, you can go here and click on either Miles Franklin or ARC Silver and get the best deals in the business. Once again, thank you guys so much for joining us on the channel. Until next time, this has been Gold Silver Pros.